Hello, you are listening to Revenge of the Drive-In. This time, our episode will be on two films, neither of which I'm certain Jim has seen.
Okay.
The 1972 Last House on the Left from director Wes Craven, and 1987/1988's Uninvited by director Graydon Clark. Jim, explain yourself.
So, okay, I'm admitting this to you live on the podcast, as we're recording this, and I just want you to affirm what I'm about to say here. That you called me, you said, "Did you watch both movies?" And I said, "Let's just start the podcast." Correct?
Yeah, something along those lines.
So, as everybody knows, Patrick and I are both very busy people. We work a lot, and I work a lot. And I have only watched one movie for this podcast, though I have watched 3 movies for this podcast.
What?
Beginning to end. So when you said, hey, we're watching, Last House on the Left, I was like, oh, I know that movie. I've seen that movie like a million times. And you're like, what's it called? On the one I'm doing, what's it called?
Uninvited.
Thank you. I was like, oh, The Last House on the Left and The Uninvited. I was like, I think I know both of these movies, and I think they're both from the 2000s. And I looked it up. I was like, oh yeah, they're both from 2009. So Friday I watched Last House on the Left from 2009. And then
remake?
Yeah, correct.
Starring Jesse Pinkman of Breaking Bad.
Yes.
Featuring someone's head getting put in a microwave, if I'm not
which
mistaken.
is awesome.
I saw that movie a long time ago.
Yeah, it used to be on Showcase, which is channel number 42 up here in this part of Ontario. But anyways, and then I woke up extra early this morning because I had to work today from like 8 a.m. to 7:30. And I got up at 6 o'clock to watch The Uninvited from 2009, which
does not star Clu Gulager or George Kennedy, the things that we knew, the actors that we knew were in the movie.
I know. And as soon as I looked up Uninvited, I was like, oh yeah, I remember Patrick said this is the cat movie. And I was like, fuck. So at work today, while I had a bit of downtime, I watched Uninvited in chunks, and then I never watched the original Last House on the Left. So you'll have to forgive me, but I will go back and watch it before the end of the year awards. So that's what's happened.
Okay. Well, The Last House on the Left is the first film from director Wes Craven. It's from 1972.
Yeah, I know.
Starring David A. Hess as Krug, which I assume Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. There's a connection to Krug, with Wes Craven doing both. But Last House on the Left is actually a really interesting film. Would have been nice if you had seen it.
Yeah, you're telling me. Yeah,
it has an interesting history. It's a rape revenge movie, which, I mean, you obviously, having just seen the remake, you know the general gist of the story. I saw the remake a long time ago. I know it's obviously going to differ here and there. I don't remember the exact points of similarities and differences. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the remake doesn't have wacky cops.
No,
Okay.
I kind of scanned the Wikipedia page for this movie. Again, Patrick and audience, I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you eventually. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Before we get into this movie, I've discovered my new favorite line in a movie from something that we've watched. It's from Uninvited, and I want you to put this in over my explanation of why I didn't watch both movies. And
Is it the line about desperate?
No.
Desperate people? Okay, because my favorite line of Uninvited is when George Kennedy says, like, desperate people do desperate things. And it's like, it's perfect because it's George Kennedy. And then the camera slowly zooms in on him. I'm not making that up. That happened. It was like the movie was making fun of George Kennedy for being in the movie.
Yeah. Well, this one was said by, I forget the actor's name, but the character of Walter. It was near the end when Rachel, the captain of the ship, comes out. And she's giving him shit for something, and he says, well, at least you're being consistent. Consistent of being a dumb bitch.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
So I was like, that'd be good. After my explanation, you can put that line in there.
I want to point out that I have... So you haven't watched The Last House on the Left. I watched The Uninvited twice today.
Why?
Because I got nothing out of it the first time, and I'm like, I don't even have anything to say about it, so.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, so Last House on the Left, 1972, early 70s. This is the
Fuck.
porno chic era, right? Last House on the Left was actually originally, it was written to be a hardcore movie, which is weird given the story.
So it was
Because
written to be a hardcore rape revenge movie?
supposedly, like the script called for hardcore scenes. Supposedly the actors signed on knowing there would be hardcore scenes, which is
Interesting.
really weird for Sandra Peabody because she plays Mary. She's not like a big name or anything, but like she's not doing pornos. She's on a soap opera at the time, and like that's weird. The only person who it makes sense for is the guy that plays Weasel, because Fred Lincoln is his name, because this is literally the only film he appeared in that isn't a porno. Although I actually call some of that into question because he's in a film called The Case of the Full Moon Murders, which is an early Sean S. Cunningham film. It came out after this. And this is part of what I'm talking about, why like the history of Last House on the Left is kind of weird and interesting. But because that film's considered sexploitation, it's not necessarily a porno. Maybe like softcore-ish. But prior to this, Sean S. Cunningham, who would eventually be the director of Friday the 13th, and he is the producer of this film, had alleged success with a couple of like films that they call them white coders. And unfortunately, we don't have Kevin to talk to us about this because he could probably explain exactly what these are. But white coders, to my knowledge, are pornographic films that are pretending to not be pornographic films. Now, they may not be hardcore like sex acts, but, and I'm going to include clips of this trailer because I think it's the worst trailer ever. It's from the 42nd Street Forever, but there's a film called Teenage Mother.
Okay. Great.
This is the story of a girl who wasn't careful. Teenage mother means 9 months of trouble.
Interestingly enough, it's famous comedic actor Fred Willard's first film performance. He's in that movie somewhere. I don't know what he does. I've never seen the movie. I've seen the trailer. It's the worst trailer in the world because it features this narrator who has the harshest, most disgusting New York accent, and he's just like shouting the title of the movie, and he's like, "Teenage Mother," and it's like awful. That film, as I understand it, was like sexploitation. It was basically pornography, but the reason it wasn't literally pornography, because the reason they were able to actually show it was they were able to market it as two things, I guess, as kind of a cautionary film about like, oh, this is what's going to happen if your daughter gets pregnant or whatever. But then also like B, they were able to market it as like medical reality, because as I understand it, that film has like a pretty graphic, if not genuinely real birthing scene.
Oh my god.
Which okay, again, this is the early days before we actually have hardcore pornography in theaters. People go to the theaters to get their rocks off, and then ends up being a graphic scene of someone giving birth because theaters, filmmakers don't know how to market just pure exploitation. They have to put it in the guise of something else. Right, even what we talked about with Black Emanuelle. Emanuelle is just a genuine sexploitation film, but a lot of the Black Emanuelle films, a lot of the Emanuelle films, they still try and make it like, oh, it's a travel log. Oh, you're not just seeing sex, you're seeing the beautiful sights of Africa. When it's like we know why everyone's in the theater for that, and so prior to The Last House on the Left, Sean S. Cunningham produced a few films that are considered white coders, and these were mild successes. He made a film called The Art of Marriage. Some people would consider these pornography. That's the reason I'm providing this context, because I think this is what porn was like before Deep Throat, basically.
Okay, gotcha.
But Last House on the Left, when I hear it had a hardcore script, I don't know if it was just going to be a bit more graphic than it ended up being, or if it was genuinely going to be Deep Throat followed by Revenge. I don't understand. I think that's weird, but I think as they were filming it, they wanted Wes Craven decided like, let's just make it a genuine horror movie. Like, let's, it's going to be better this way. And big part of the reason it works as a genuine horror movie is the casting of David Hess. Now, David Hess, Jim, I want you to look at his Wikipedia page. He's such a scary, frightening man that he's even murdering someone in his Wikipedia photo.
I don't like his photo, if I'm honest.
He's amazing. So David Hess, a very interesting career. One of the most terrifying, like, badass, like, tough guy, scary, frightening villains in film history. Didn't have a huge career as an actor. Last House on the Left is definitely his most memorable film, most memorable performance. He's also in Swamp Thing, which is another Wes Craven movie that's actually, like, considerably bigger than this. He made a few others. He directed, like, a slasher movie or two. But before he ever acted, he was a successful musician, primarily a songwriter, although he recorded the first ever version of the future Elvis Presley hit All Shook Up.
I'm in love. I'm all shook up. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
He did not write the song, but he did record it.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
If you listen to his version, it is pretty similar to Elvis's version. It's not as good.
He also wrote and recorded one of my favorite country songs, Speedy Gonzales.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that song, but yeah, he wrote a lot of songs. He wrote songs for Elvis. He wrote songs for Pat Boone. All of that stuff. Very successful songwriter. He wrote songs for this film. The songs featured in this movie, which are amazing and at times very, very off-putting and not fitting into the film at all, are written and performed by David Hess. There's really two ones. There's one, it's the official title is Water Music, because the song starts, has this beautiful little musical introduction, and in the film it's when you see shots of water, and then it kicks into this like high energy, like hillbilly pop song with like a kazoo, and it's a genuinely weird song, and it's completely off-putting, but it's really fun. It's really catchy, and it basically just describes the plot of the movie. It's the song about Sadie Jr., Krug, and Weasel, who have captured these two women and are going to rape them and then kill them. Like, that's what the lyrics are about, but it's in this like fun, energetic way, and it's really weird. But if you listen to the lyrics, it's like, okay, the songs are, or the lyrics are from the perspective of one of these characters, so it makes sense because they're like psychopaths, and they think this is fun. And then the other song that he wrote, which is a beautiful song, it's I think it has like a different official title, but it's The Road Leads to Nowhere.
And the road leads to nowhere.
Which we hear that a number of times in the film, including one memorable moment where it like fades out and echoes really ominously as a couple of characters are just driving, and the way we hear that lyric over and over again is very ominous and foreshadowing. And that song just on its own, I think David Hess could have done the soundtrack for The Graduate. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, there's like this beautiful, I would say that song is more like Crosby, Stills and Nash than it is Simon and Garfunkel, but it like fits in that kind of movie though.
See, now I'm really upset that I've watched 3 movies for this podcast and none of them were this movie.
Yeah, and you would love, in particular, Water Music. I think you would.
I'm sure really I would. I've already written it down. I'm going to look it up after we
how offbeat that is. David Hess is one of the biggest reasons this movie works for me. He is a terrifying villain as Krug. In the remake, it's Garrett Dillahunt, who I want to say did a good job. I don't really remember specifics.
Yeah, he was good.
Not as terrifying. Like, Garrett Dillahunt is kind of like a...
Well, he's got kind of a silly voice.
Does he? Yeah, okay, I believe.
Because he's it's not even like high pitched or anything, but he's kind of talking like this the whole time. You know, oh, you girls are being bad. Where's my son? Did my son rat me out? You know.
And is the son Junior? Is that Jesse from Breaking Bad? Is that Aaron Paul?
No. So the son,
Aaron Paul is Weasel, or they might change the character names. I don't know.
The guy from Breaking Bad is a guy who's Francis. That's what they call him in the movie.
Okay, Weasel is Fred Weasel Podowski.
So I assume it's the same character. The woman, I forget who the woman is played by, but she's beautiful, and her name is Sadie.
It's Sadie in the original, yeah.
Okay, and then the guy's son, Krug's son in this movie, in the remake, is named Justin.
Okay. He's Junior.
Junior.
Junior, and at one point Mary names him Willow when Mary's trying to convince him to
Willow.
to help her. She's trying to like win him over by okay, listen, I'm just going to explain this movie because I know I'm not getting any help.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So the film starts out, I want to note, so obviously this is a rape revenge movie, which is in the wrong hands just about the worst genre of film to ever exist.
Yeah.
I say just about because there are like, if you go deep into exploitation movies, there's a bunch of disgusting stuff. But as far as films that have kind of, some of these films have kind of become mainstream, it's a despicable genre. And yet I've seen a few that I think are pretty good. And I think this film is very good in a lot of ways. It also misses the mark. There are so many things wrong with this movie. But I think if you got rid of all of those and if you just focus on the good in Wes Craven's 1972, The Last House on the Left, I think you have a horror masterpiece.
Okay, I'll believe you.
But I bring this all up to say that the very opening scene, I think, sets the perfect tone of the movie understands how disgusting and disturbing this material is. There's just this old guy, this postman, dropping mail off at the, I want to say Cunningham, but that's obviously the producer, the Collingwood residence for Mary Collingwood, who's just turned 17. And she's getting all these birthday notes, and he's putting them in the mailbox, and he's like, oh, it seems like just about every person on Earth is sending her a birthday card. You'd think she's the first person ever to turn 17. And then he just kind of thinks, and he's like, she is just about the prettiest girl I've ever seen, though. And I'm like, okay, that's perfect. Because that's just establishing men are creepy.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and then, and then nothing comes of that character, but obviously that kind of sets up, this is Mary, she's a pretty girl, she's, whether she knows it or not, she is the object of, not even affection, just an object of desire to these other men. So 1972, I think this setting is very, like the time period I think is very important to this movie because there is a very clear generational gap, even though we only get one scene of Mary with her parents, and that's all we need because we see Mary is from the peace and love generation, and she's more free. She uses the word tits, I think, at one point, and they're like, oh, geez, like, what's wrong with you?
They're like, Mary, you're grounded.
And her parents are not of that generation. They don't talk like her. They don't think like her. Mm-hmm. But they do give her a peace symbol necklace for her birthday as she's going to go off to this concert in
New York City.
She's also going with her friend Phyllis, who they're not big on Phyllis. They're like, she's a little sketchy, but like, and then I think it's implied maybe that it might be a class thing because whatever concert they're going to isn't in a nice neighborhood. Mm. But she's going with Phyllis because Phyllis is from that neighborhood and she's going to help her out. And then we see the two hanging around and they're just like hanging out. It looks like where they filmed the Blair Witch Project. They're just in the woods on these rocks in the water. They find some booze that Phyllis had hid there, and then they're just like, I wish we had some grass. And so when they get to New York, that's what they're looking for. We do hear on the radio an announcement that Krug and Weasel have escaped from prison. They were accompanied by an animal-like woman, is how they describe Sadie.
Oh, that's attractive.
And Junior, and it's said even on the radio that like it's believed that Krug has gotten his son hooked on heroin basically just so that he will obey him at all times. And that's important because that's introduced as a big part of the movie later because Junior is at times sympathetic because he is definitely a victim. But it's also interesting because Junior is the one that initiates the kidnapping because the two girls are looking for someone that looks like they might be dealing drugs and they talk to Junior. And he's like, yeah, I got someone. Why don't you come back with us? And then immediately they're threatened in this shitty apartment. There's an unfortunate line delivery when it's revealed. I think it's like Sadie comes up with like a gun or a knife. And I think it's Phyllis that goes, oh shit. And she says it with that level of emotion. Like, it's a bad delivery. Like, could we have gotten a different take for that?
So is Junior a bad person in this movie, or is he a good person? Does he get his moment of, like, moral clarity?
He does.
All? Okay.
And he ends up killing himself.
Oh, okay.
In a really interesting scene, but yeah, because so he does not act probably when he should, or certainly he doesn't act when Mary is begging him to help her. But then he also like kind of tries to help her get away, but then they just get caught. And then he's basically suffering from heroin withdrawal for the rest of the movie. And then he takes action, but at that point he's confronting his father, who's manipulating him and gaslighting him and doing all that stuff. So, it doesn't work out, and he ends up shooting himself because Krug tells him to.
Gotcha. Well, it's actually funny in the remake. There's a line early on when the two girls meet him. They go to buy weed off of him. He kind of like lures
Okay,
them.
so it's the same thing there. Okay.
Yeah, well, he kind of lures them back to his motel room that he's staying in with the gang. They start toking up, and the gang walks in, and that's when everything goes south. But he's kind of lounging around in this hoodie. And the girls, after token up a bit, they're like, "You'd be really cute if you got rid of this drug dealer hoodie." And they just keep on making like reference to him like looking like a druggie, and I mean it's probably has nothing to do with the original movie, but I mean he just looks like a normal kid. You know what I mean? And
I actually went to this Junior guy. He doesn't look like someone that'd be hooked on heroin. I think he plays that well. He doesn't have that like look facially, I guess. But I went to high school with someone that looks quite a bit like this guy. Has different kind of hair.
Oh.
No, not to my knowledge, but I would say this guy looks like a mix of that guy I went to high school with and whatever that actor is from The Bear, the guy that looks like Gene Wilder.
Oh,
the guy from Shameless, I think.
Yes.
Jeremy Allen White. He looks like a mix of Peter, my friend from high school, and Jeremy Allen White. But yes, so girls are captured. They're taken. They're thrown in the trunk and they're just driving. They're planning. The gang is planning to go out of state. Meanwhile, the parents, John and Estelle, John, of course, is a doctor. They report the missing person to the sheriff. The sheriff is beyond incompetent. He's got his deputy, whose name I don't remember, but the deputy's played by Martin Kove, who I think is one of the villains in the Karate Kid movies. I know he went on to be like a 80s, 90s direct-to-video action star. So, accomplished career for him.
That's so mean.
Well, because look at his Wikipedia page. He's like in the full Karate Kid outfit at some convention. I don't have any respect for those people.
The way you said it, you were just like, yes. Just the way you said it was so offensive to him if he'd heard it.
The car, the gang's convertible, breaks down actually like right outside of Mary's driveway. They obviously don't realize that. And then they're taking the girls out of the trunk and they just take them into the woods. And at this point, if you listen to the lyrics of Water Music, let's have some fun with these two lovely children and then off them as soon as we're done. Or as soon as we're done, I believe is the melody. But yeah, so they're just going to like rape them and kill them. They threaten Phyllis and they say, you have to do everything that we tell you to do or we will cut Mary. And they make her like piss herself. And then they cut away from it, but they do. It appears they forcibly undress the two girls, and it appears they force the two girls to have sex with each other. But they do cut away from that. And they cut back to one of the biggest things that drags this movie down, the stupid cops. The cops actually at one point drive by the car broken down by Mary's house, and they're like, oh, I wonder what that's doing there. I was like, we're too busy that we can't stop and look at it. Eventually, of course, the cops hear something on the radio or something about specifically the car that's broken down outside the Collingwood house, and that's the car that everybody's looking for with these escaped convicts. But then when they're trying to get there, then their car runs out of gas, and it's just like a wacky odyssey of the two of them going on foot. And they try to get a ride from a bunch of hippies who flip them off. And then they try and get a ride from a lady who's got like a couple hundred chickens on the back of her truck. And she's like, the car won't start unless you, like, however much weight you two are, you have to take off that much weight in chickens. It's just terrible. Every cutaway to the cops is like unbearable.
Kind of, is it like a la James Bond when you have like that bumbling country sheriff in those Bond
I would
movies?
compare it, and I already did compare it when we covered Halloween 5. Remember the cops in Halloween 5?
Yeah, and they had the goofy
Now, they were a
sound
small part
effects
of that
with them.
movie, but supposedly those cops are kind of based on the Last House on the Left cops, which is funny because anyone who talks about the original Last House on the Left will acknowledge that the cops are the worst part of the movie.
Interesting. Interesting.
So at one point, this is like when Krug is away for some reason, but Phyllis runs away and she's being chased by Sadie and Weasel, as Junior is forced to stay and keep watch on Mary. And this is when Mary starts to play into him and tries to convince, because she can probably recognize that he's the one who's not really interested in performing sex crimes. But even if she didn't recognize that, she's just, begging for her life, basically. And she names him Willow. She gives him her peace necklace, and she says, like, "Oh, you need a fix. You're addicted to heroin. We can go to my dad's house. My dad's a doctor. He can get you methadone." And it's like my dad's house is like right there. Can we please just go? And Weasel, Krug, and Sadie eventually catch up with Phyllis, and they disembowel her. They like cut off her arms and stuff like that. And then they come back, and this is when they find Junior and Mary, who are like kind of trying to get away, and they stop her. And then Sadie like waves at her with Phyllis's cut off hand, and then Mary just screams. And then Krug carves his name into her like breastbone, like sternum area, and then rapes her.
After she's already dead?
What?
Does he rape Mary or does he rape Phyllis or whatever?
Did I say Phyllis? Mary.
Oh, okay.
And then like it's Weasel probably rapes her too, because they're both like their hands are like covered in blood, and like after this they're like trying to get like grass and stuff from sticking to their hands, both of them. But then Mary, like without saying a word, just kind of puts on her clothes and just like slowly wanders off like to a lake, basically knowing she's going to die now. And it's a beautiful shot, and she gets killed. They shoot her in the lake, and she's just like floating there. And then the gang washes themselves in the same lake, puts on a change of clothes, and then they go back to their car. But of course their car's broken down, so they just go to the first house they see, and that's of course Mary's house. This is actually really interesting how the demeanor of all of the characters completely changes. They like look professional, like Krug with his like slicked back hair and his suit. Like, this looks like a dude I would do a business deal with. This doesn't look like a serial rapist.
Are they posing as door-to-door salesmen or something at this point, or is it like...
No.
Okay.
No, they stop because their car's broken down. And they seem perfectly normal. And the reason why they're like staying overnight here is because the parents are like, well, the only garage we know is closed now, obviously. And it's like, and we can't take you anywhere because Mary has the car. So I guess you can stay the night. You can stay in Mary's room. And when they're in Mary's room, it's Weasel that notices a photo. And it's like, hey, check that out. What are the odds? Like, look whose house we're in. There's also, interestingly enough, an eagle-eyed viewer will notice a photo of Richard Nixon above Mary's vanity. However, now, Mary, being this kind of hippie, why would she have a Richard Nixon poster, or not poster, a photograph? I am pretty sure, I mean, we never really see it closely. I'm pretty sure it's the racist depiction of Nixon as Chinese, which, if you've ever famously seen that, because
no, I haven't. I don't even know.
When Nixon was running for president, they were trying to hit him with like anti-Chinese propaganda because he was open to dealing with the People's Republic of China as opposed to other candidates. And there were like very racist campaign posters made about him that made him look like Mickey Rooney. And I'm pretty sure that's what that photograph is, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'm looking up right now Nixon as Chinese.
Look up Tricky Dicky. That's what they called it. Which, interestingly enough, is how Weasel dies, of course.
With a tricky penis?
Yes. Does that not happen in the remake? Does his penis not get bit off?
No. Can I tell you what happens in the remake? Because it's actually comical how his character dies. So John, the father, who Mary doesn't die in the remake,
Oh, I kind of remember that. Okay.
Yeah, so just to catch you up, I guess. Just to catch you up, because I watched the incorrect movie.
Yeah, I'm going to list this episode as Last House on the Left 1972/2009, I guess. We're just going to take the 2009 one off the list now.
Yeah, so the family, or the gang shows up because their car crashed into a tree in the woods because Mary started a kerfuffle in the back when she burned Sadie with a cigarette lighter. Her friend in this movie named Paige, she gets stabbed in the stomach. She doesn't get raped, but she gets stabbed in the stomach a couple times and stabbed in the back a couple times by the Weasel character and Krug. And then Mary does get raped. And she stands up slowly. She kind of pulls her clothes back on, and it turns out she's actually holding a large stone, and she cracks Krug over the head with it and runs away into the lake, and she starts swimming, and then Krug and the gang stand there on the shore taking pot shots at her, and then Krug hits her in the back, and she seemingly dies. They walk down the street. It's like there's like a big storm coming in. It's pouring rain. They walk for God knows how long, and they stumble upon Mary's family's cottage, and John and Emma, that's Mary's parents' name in this movie, they invite them in. They let them stay in this guest house and stuff like that. And it's actually Justin, a.k.a. Junior, who realizes that they're Mary's parents. And he feels guilty. He almost vomits and passes out. But everybody's asleep except for the Weasel character. And by this point, John and Emma have saved Mary from the front porch. She somehow crawled out of the lake and up to the front porch.
I do vaguely remember that.
Yeah, and they've taken the bullet out of her and stuff. And then the way Weasel dies is...
And John, I remember, is Tony Goldwyn, who just recently spoke at the DNC.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, well, and it was weird that they had him, because, he played the president on a television show, but, who cares?
Yeah. What does he have to do?
I mean, can you really complain when, there was Hulk Hogan was at the Republican convention, and not only is he a washed-up celebrity, but he said the N-word more recently than he did anything of celebrity significance, so, yeah, I don't know about that.
Oh, man. But yeah, so they take the bullet out of her, and John runs out to go find keys for the boat to get away in, but also to get, weapons to kill all these people. His wife, Emma, is in the house, and the Weasel character comes in, and she kind of, half acidly seduces him, just to kind of, put him off his guard.
Okay, that's exactly what happens so far.
Okay. But then she sends him
But she bites off his dick when she gives him oral, is the point. Okay, that's the most memorable moment of the movie, just about.
So that doesn't happen in this. What happens in this is she sends him into the living room, and he sees Mary, recovering on, the living room table, and he's like, what the fuck? And then she cracks him over the back of the head with a wine bottle. Then she accidentally stabs him in the chest as he's running towards her. Then her husband, John, comes in and hits him in the face with a hammer and then squeezes his broken nose that he's reset. And then together, the husband and wife duo, they try to take down Weasel by drowning him in the kitchen sink that's full of dirty sink water. Then they turn on the garbage disposal in the sink, and it starts tearing up Weasel's hand, and he's just screaming his lungs off. And then the husband, John, he takes the claw end of the hammer and then just stabs him in the back of the head with it and finally kills him. But there's blood all over the kitchen, there's broken glass all over the house, and it's the most botched it's the most botched murder in history, really.
I mean, that's overall kind of how the entire climax goes of the movie, but it's interesting, obviously, that there's that change of Mary surviving, because most, I'm not confident enough to say all, I haven't seen a ton of movies, but most rape revenge movies is the rapist getting revenge. It is interesting that this movie... Or not the rapist getting revenge, the victim getting revenge. The victim dies, and it's the parents getting revenge once they figure out what's going on. And I actually like the scenes of discovery. The first scene where they kind of notice something. So Krug says, it's this is my wife, Sadie, and this is my son. And then, they give a different name than Krug and Weasel, as you might expect.
Oh, do they?
But... when they're having dinner with them, they kind of notice, some things are off. I think they notice that Krug and Sadie don't have a wedding ring. They also notice that Sadie just drinks like a fish. And they notice, I couldn't quite tell what they were trying to do with the camera here, but they were focusing on how Krug was, cutting up his meatballs or something. I don't know if there was supposed to be something, violent about the way he was cutting it. It didn't translate if that was the case. And then while all this is happening, there's Junior, who's just like locked in Mary's bedroom, just screaming because he's going through heroin withdrawal.
Oh,
and they're
that's
just
fun.
like, oh, what's going on? And
Well, it is both movies, by the way, that where the parents get revenge, because
right, but the victim still survives though.
correct, but she's like severely traumatized, and they find out that she was raped by like just examining her as she's,
Yeah, but
like,
I'm
half
just thinking
unconscious.
of the other rape revenge movies I've seen. There's Revenge from 2017, 2018, which is great. It's the best film I've seen in the genre. The woman gets revenge. There's the most famous one, I Spit on Your Grave. The woman, the survivor, gets revenge. There's Miss 45. I actually don't remember if Miss 45 is a rape revenge movie. It is definitely just a woman killing people. And then They Call Her One Eye is a great rape revenge movie. Definitely, that's the woman surviving, and I think she loses an eye in the process. And that's, if you know, you're a Tarantino fan. The one-eyed woman in Kill Bill is very much based on the character in They Call Her One Eye.
Okay,
I think it's Daryl Hannah.
it is, yeah.
That's like a Swedish movie. That movie's really good, and I think They Call Her One Eye is the you know, schlocky English title when it was released in America. I think the original title of that is Thriller: A Cruel Picture or something like that, something along those lines. It's got two awesome titles. You can't go wrong with either one, but They Call Her One Eye is just very
No, you really
schlocky
can't.
and fun. But yeah, so at some point, Estelle is like comforting Junior as he's just like crying and screaming in the bathroom. And she's like, is there anything we can do to help? Like, my husband's a doctor. Then she notices that he's wearing Mary's necklace. Now, a little bullshit, because you know how freaking common peace symbol necklaces are?
Yeah, in the late
But,
60s and early 70s.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe all it does is it gets her to look into it further, and she eventually finds like bloody clothes in their luggage. And then she and John leave the house, and they find Mary's body really easily, which is surprising because they didn't know where to look. But they do bring the body back. The body is on the couch. But
okay.
we don't see much of it after that. So then they develop a plan. We don't see them discussing it. We see John setting up a bunch of booby traps. And then we see Estelle meets with Weasel. Weasel's like openly hitting on her. And she goes along with it and says, hey, let's go do this. But let's not do it inside because my husband could hear. And then I think she said something about like tying him up. Or maybe he even said something about like, I'd let you tie me up. So they do tie up his hands behind his back, and then she starts to go down on him, and this is tastefully shot. We don't see anything hardcore here. We don't see penis.
Okay. Darn, I mean.
And I really like how they visually communicate that his dick's being bit off, because obviously you see his reaction, his facial reaction, but even just what they do to show that she's biting down, they show her hand and she just grabs the grass and like pulls it up. I think that's really good. And so yeah, she bites off his dick and he dies. I don't think we see him after that. And then the booby traps go off and honestly aren't that effective. And then Krug and John are fighting in like the living room. It's interrupted by Junior holding a gun at Krug. Junior finally deciding to do the right thing, but then Krug just berates him into killing himself. While those father and son, had been arguing, John has gone downstairs and he comes back up with a chainsaw. And he's fighting Krug with the chainsaw, who's like holding him off with like tables and chairs and stuff like that. Eventually he gets like electrocuted by a booby trap door handle. And then Estelle is fighting Sadie, and Sadie like kind of escapes and runs away and ends up like falling into the pool, and then she gets her throat slit by Estelle, and Krug gets killed with the chainsaw eventually. And it's actually like right when the police show up, because the police had been
Now, does he get like his head
dicking
cut
around
off,
for
or like
hours.
is his gut cut open, or how does he die?
We don't really see it,
Oh, okay.
but it is very much, I mean, they successfully get their revenge, but their entire house is covered in blood. It is the same kind of thing. And, there's a dead Junior, even though he kind of tried to help at the end. And that's the last house on the left. Jim, what did you think of it? Oh, never mind. I think it's a good movie. I think it misses its mark
Damn it.
in a lot of ways. Some of the delivery is poor. I mentioned that one, like, oh shit, when they realize they're being, like, kidnapped and threatened. Like, some of the acting's not great. Some of it's good. Mary is good. Sandra Peabody, I think is her name. Krug, David Hess is, like, terrifying. Weasel, in his only non-pornographic role, is pretty good. Junior's good. I fully believe Junior as a heroin addict going through withdrawals. Like, I think those are good. I actually think the parents aren't that great. I think a better parent performances could have made this movie better. It hurts. The dad looks exactly like John Vernon of Animal House and Dirty Harry.
Okay.
But he doesn't sound like him at all, and it's just like I wish it could have been John Vernon. I want John Vernon like calling Krug a motherfucker or something like that. That would have been awesome.
Oh, that does sound fun.
This movie was made for $90,000.
Yeah, and I saw
that
it took in like $2 million at the box office, which isn't too bad, really.
There's a lot of effective things about it. I love what they do musically. I think David Hess wrote a couple of great songs for this movie. One that works thematically, one that's just fun. But I even like what they do with it, with the way they have that the road leads to nowhere kind of echoing and fading out during one scene, just like really ominous. I really like what Wes Craven does with the music. I love what David Hess did to record the music, to write it, but then even how Craven utilized it in the movie I think is great. There's scenes of poignancy. The scene where Mary gets killed is like so tragically beautiful. It's received a lot of comparisons to, there's a famous painting of Ophelia drowned in the water.
Is that the one where like it's all kind of, she's like laying on her back in the water surrounded by lilies and flowers and things like that?
Yeah, and this scene looks quite a bit like that. I believe Wes Craven did that intentionally. It's a good movie. It's not a great movie, and it feels like it could have been a great movie if we got a little bit more from the parents, maybe as characters or as performances, because we don't even really, when the gang comes to stay with them, they mention like, oh, it's been a really tough day, but you don't see it on them. You don't see the panic that they're going through. I mean, at that point, they don't think Mary's dead, but she's missing. She's been missing for 24 hours at that point. And it doesn't really translate, and then it's like the cops are terrible. They're a smaller part of the movie than I remembered it, but every time we cut to them, it's just awful. And I remember talking, I've speculated on this, and I'm like, is this a weird attempt to make this movie a dark comedy? Or is this Wes Craven acknowledging this movie is so depressing and so dark and so disturbing that I just need to throw off-kilter comic relief in there? I don't think it works either way, but I do think Wes Craven effectively made a very, very disturbing movie that is definitely undercut by cutaways to the cops and their wacky road trip, and it's just bad.
Well, and again, it's kind of like Halloween. You know, obviously it's
what the fuck do you know? You haven't seen it.
Well, okay.
No, you don't get to respond to this.
Okay.
But Jim, you want to quickly sum up how you feel about the remake?
The remake was fine. There was nothing exciting or special about it. It kind of gave me the vibes of a movie almost made to scare children away from pot, because pot played such an important, a pivotal role in the story, where these two young girls get kidnapped because of their want for pot. Yeah, I mean, it was fine. I guess it had a happy ending. The coolest thing at the end is when...
Whose face did they put in the microwave? Is it Krug?
Yeah, it's Krug's face.
I assume they cut off his head and then put it in the microwave?
No, what had happened was, I guess like they knocked him out, or they seemingly killed him at the end, both Emma, the mother, and John. And then it just kind of cuts to them driving away on the boat into town to take Mary to a hospital. But then that's kind of like intercut with shots of like a scalpel going into somebody's skin and needles and stuff like that.
Oh, I kind of remember that. They like do a surgery on him.
Yeah, sort of. And then John, the father, comes back and he wakes Krug up, and Krug's like, hey, I can't move. And he goes, yeah, he's like, I made you like a quadriplegic. He's like, sorry, I didn't have tape or rope. And then he just like has this microwave that he's jury-rigged, I guess, to work with the door open. And he just like lifts his head and then rolls this microwave on like a dolly over his head and then just turns it on and the guy's head explodes. It's pretty cool. But yeah, like it was a movie that, you know, there was nothing exciting or like particularly good about it.
Well, and the remake reminds me, too, that this... I think in general, because I think The Last House on the Left, the original, is like a good movie. I don't think it's a great movie. I think people might be tricked into thinking it's a better horror movie than it actually is because it is one of the many films that got remade in that period. And most of the horror movies that were being remade were horror masterpieces. Halloween is remade.
Yes,
The Wicker
yeah.
Man is remade in like 06-ish. Like the 2000s into the early 2010s, every horror movie was being remade. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, which also is not a horror masterpiece, the original. And then the Fog was remade, and the original Fog is like a good movie. It's not a great movie.
Yeah. Well, I keep on getting Last House on the Left confused with The Strangers in my head for whatever reason.
The Hills Have Eyes was remade around the same time, which is
Yeah.
another one that I don't think is that great of a movie, but people might think it is because it got that prestige remake treatment.
I think if they had remade this movie to be more in line with the original, and by more in line I mean show that grotesque, gory stuff like cutting Mary's friend's arm off and stuff like that, and actually,
Well, they don't show that in the original either. They show the severed arm, but you don't see that much of them cutting into her. You see a little bit of like a tiny bit of guts, which I think were just condoms filled with like
Spaghetti
red food
sauce.
coloring and stuff. Yeah, stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, and then I mean, I think this movie honestly could have killed Mary. It would have made it would have made the stakes higher. But almost 5 minutes after you think she's actually dead, she comes back alive, and you're like, oh, okay.
Well, it's
what was the
interesting
point of that?
remaking a rape revenge movie in which the rape victim dies. Remaking a film in that genre in an era in which that genre is not only dead, it's like acknowledged as this like heinous thing of the past. I think that's why they made her live, probably. It's like, well, it can't be so mean-spirited.
Yeah, well,
But then they
even-
still shove a guy's face in the microwave. It's like,
Yeah.
it's still a mean-spirited movie, it's just in a different way.
Yeah, and the mother shoots Sadie right in the face, like in the eyeball, and plasters her head all over like a bathroom wall. Justin, aka Junior, never kills himself. He just kind of hangs out and continues to be a bitch for the whole movie. Yeah, the parents walk away as the real true badasses of this movie. And again, there's nothing to write home about, really. It was all right. It was kind of shot like almost like a television show. Like it didn't have, like, it was just missing something. You know what I mean? I'm not sure what it was. Maybe it was like the color palette or something that they used. I don't know, but it was shot like a television show almost.
I remember the poster to this movie, because this is like one of those, because I was old enough to be aware of these movies when they were coming out, these remakes and stuff, and if I, like a lot of them, even if I didn't see them, that's how I became aware of the originals. It's like, oh, this is a remake. The poster of this movie, and I guess the title maybe kind of sounds like it, because the title really doesn't mean anything in the context of the original movie. Mm-hmm. But the poster for the remake, it makes it look like it's like a haunted house movie or something. And it's like, I think that's probably what I thought it was when I first heard about it. And it's like, the house isn't significant.
No, not at all.
I guess they show up at the house. This movie could have been called Uninvited.
Absolutely.
The guests, they show up, they're uninvited, and yeah, that's a terrible title for a killer cat movie, by the way. But that having been said, let us move into discussion of Uninvited.
First off, the movie should have been called Innie, not an Outie. But also, ironically, the other movie that I watched, The Uninvited, I guess that name doesn't work for it either, because it's about a girl who comes back from a psychiatric hospital to realize that her father is going to marry like a nurse that used to look after their mother who died in a fiery house accident. Anyways, interesting movie, but not that interesting. Stars Elizabeth Banks. That's really the only good part of it, and she's great in it.
You also mentioned I got a text this morning about some 1944 Uninvited movie. I think I've seen that movie. I think that's a ghost movie. I don't really remember
so I
it,
looked.
but I think that was decent.
Well, you remember like a long time ago you sent me our movie list, like the whole movie list for the whole podcast. I was trying to see which Uninvited and which Last House on the Left were on there, and you had multiple Last Houses on the left, or maybe you only had the one, but then you had two Uninviteds.
Yeah, but I named the directors of both films.
Yeah, well,
Come
I
on.
didn't remember. I looked at my text and I was like, oh yeah, it's these movies, and that's what happened. It's because I'm a
George
lazy
Kennedy.
and a bad person.
You look up the George Kennedy's filmography. See what Uninvited movies he's in. He can't be in all of them.
Well, hold on, let me look it up. I've got the page open. Yeah, the plus about this movie is that there's George Kennedy, Clu Gulager. That's really about it.
I always struggle with that name. Clu Gulager with fake teeth. They give him the Linnea Quigley / Max von Sydow treatment in this one. I don't know why that is.
Yes, I did. Okay, so this movie, there's honestly not much to say. It's a pretty wild movie. It's about a cat that was being tested on in some kind of facility by scientists.
Apparently near Fort Lauderdale. Which, interestingly enough, where Sandra Peabody's from is a connection.
Oh, interesting.
Mary Collingwood is from Fort Lauderdale.
Wow, good. That's a great plus for this episode.
Also attempted rape in this film.
That
Those are the
is
2
true.
points of comparison.
Yeah, so this cat, it's got like a monster cat living inside of it. It's not ever explained.
A monster cat that's bigger than it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the closest thing to an explanation we get is at the very beginning of the movie, where these two scientists are looking at the x-rays of this cat, and they're like, there appears to be something in this cat. Perhaps it's a tumor. Bring it here. So they take this cat out of the cage, and it immediately runs amok in this scientific facility. It escapes, and we don't know why there's an issue, but these scientists say, get people with like radiation suits to catch it. And we're like, oh, it's an irradiated cat? That's good to know. When they corner this cat in like a stairwell, a monster cat comes out of the cat's mouth and just starts slashing people's throats open, and it kills like 4 or 5 guys, and then runs into a parking garage. And then the scientists, who haven't seen the bodies that we've seen on screen, they go, we gotta send the building into lockdown. You saw what it did to those people in the stairwell. It's like, I saw, you didn't, though. Like, I'm certain of that. The scientists try to get the cat, they try to kill the cat in the parking garage, and it kills the scientists and gets away. And you're right about this inner monster cat being bigger than the cat itself.
Yeah, because it's a puppet cat.
But it's also kind of like
rarely do we see it in full body, but especially the scene where it's chomping on George Kennedy's ankle. That is like bigger than a house cat.
Oh, absolutely. It's like, you know what it actually kind of reminded me of? It reminded me of, not in size, but it reminded me of those gargoyle dogs from Ghostbusters. I don't know why.
Okay, I was going to say it's just
similar
it reminds me an awful lot of just the hobgoblins in the terrible B-movie Hobgoblins, because they're frequent cuts to the cat. And it's just like, it's not clear like how the cat is at the level that it is. It's like, okay, is it like propping itself up on this table with its front legs? Like, what is it like when they shoot at the liquor bottles or whatever? It's like, what's the cat doing there?
Well, I actually feel bad for the cat in this movie. It's like a beautiful tabby cat, and you can tell...
The actual cat.
Yeah.
The cat, the exoskeleton cat.
Yes, the exo cat. I feel bad for it because every time it's in a scene with people, like, you can tell it doesn't like any of these people. Like, there's one scene...
It's also dubbed like it's an Italian film.
It is. It's constantly, like...
This is the second film this season that we featured that only had the budget for one cat sound effect and just kept using it over and over again.
Yeah, meow, 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 meow,
it's
meow.
The same
meow,
noise
meow.
constantly. It's just terrible.
Oh,
it's the only thing more repetitive in this film is the score, which is one of the worst I've heard in a long time.
Well, the score...
Dan Slider is his name.
Sure, that's a real
fuck
name.
that guy. Oh, can I say that this film starts off with a lie? The very first thing that comes up on screen says Amazing Movies, and I'm like, nope.
I saw that.
Because Amazing Movies presents, and it's like, no, we're starting off with a lie. This movie sucks. Jim, this movie made me exhausted.
It did.
I was so fucking done.
Well, and you know,
15 minutes into the movie, no killer cat movie should be this boring.
First
no
off,
movie
it's an hour
about
and a half.
A killer cat within another cat should be this boring.
And you know what makes it boring? And I was about to bring this point up. There's no actual plot progression. It's all like all the progression is done off screen. So you.
I was going to say what makes it pretty boring is there's very little differentiation between the characters. We've got our two bimbos who are not truly hey, I'm not saying that. George Kennedy calls them that. Blame him. Blame Oscar winner George Kennedy.
They are bimbos, though.
They kind of are, but like
Suzanne and Bobby.
Can you differentiate between the two of them?
Yeah, Bobby's the redhead and Suzanne's the blonde-haired one.
I mean, in character.
Oh,
no, you can't. and then the three boys. There's one character that stands out.
Yeah, what are their names? It's
no one cares. There's
Martin's
Scientist
the one
Man,
that stands out. He's
there's
Scientist
Jock
guy.
Boy,
Yeah.
and Finance Bro.
Yes, correct. Yeah, Crypto.
And
Bro.
I guess Finance Bro, I got Finance Bro and Jock Boy mixed up the entire movie. The only one who stands out is Scientist Man.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and the movie has, there's literally no sense to it, no rhyme or reason, if you will. This cat's killing people, and it kills a couple dudes in a truck at one point. It just drives off a highway
picked up
into
at
a
a
creek.
mobile gas station for some reason.
Yeah, and even though it was already in Fort Lauderdale, and then hopped on a truck and somehow made its way onto a dock, into a trash can on a dock, and these two bimbos, we're introduced to them outside of a swanky hotel where they're just kind of hanging out. They're like, I want to go in and sit in the lobby. My feet hurt. They run into this rich guy named Walter, who's like a bigwig on Wall Street. Got a lot of money. And he's like, oh,
and he has Dean Stockwell's voice.
I don't know who Dean Stockwell is, but I'll believe you.
Oh, Jesus.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm the worst person you could have possibly had for this podcast. Specifically this episode, but the podcast in general. Yeah, these two bimbos are talking to this Walter guy, and he's like, oh, they're young broads who are hot and dumb. They can help me get away with crimes and maybe fuck me. And then pretty shortly afterwards, we're introduced to these three random college dudes.
Right away, when the bimbos meet them, I didn't catch this until the second time I saw this. I thought when the bimbos meet up with them, I thought they knew them already.
No, they have no idea who they are.
Well, I know. I'm saying I didn't know that until the second time because I'm saying the chemistry feels like they've always known them, and also like immediately they invite them on the yacht cruise that they don't have any reason to believe they're allowed to bring guests.
Exactly.
And it's you wouldn't do that unless you knew the person, and it's just weird, and it's terrible. Oh god. I didn't even hate this movie. There are moments,
but it was just exhausting.
I already said that. Find a new word.
Okay, sorry. It was just tiring. Yeah, everybody winds up on this millionaire's yacht, on Walter's yacht, and he's leaving Fort Lauderdale to escape the government. For some reason, instead of putting money into an offshore account on the Cayman Islands, he's taking money out when he gets there. I don't think.
He's taking money out because he's been hiding money there, and the SEC is finally cracking down on him. That part makes sense. The part that doesn't make sense is not only is the SEC after him for whatever, like we do not really know what he's done in a business sense, but he also murders a guy like right before this, which just makes it all the more worse. Or he has Clu Gulager murder the guy.
These two guys, George Kennedy and Clu Gulager, are obviously they're the best parts of the movie.
Kennedy specifically, Gulager didn't do much for me here.
No, Kennedy, you can also tell he really doesn't give a shit.
Well, he gave a shit enough to comb his hair over. I think that's saying something.
That's true, yeah.
I like how his hair is like 15 years out of date. I mean, it's a comb over, which is like never in style, but like the sideburns and stuff, it's
he looks like he
early
looks like he
70s.
walked out of 1976 or something.
Yeah.
You know? Which, I mean...
he walked out of Airport 75 is what he walked out of. That's, you know.
But everybody's on this dumb yacht. They've picked up the cat out of a trash bag, and they've brought it onto the yacht. And they've agreed to be the crew on the yacht because Walter was mean to the crew and they all quit. The only member of the crew that's left is the captain. Her name's Rachel.
Who ends up kind of being the best character of the movie.
She does. Her and Martin are the only two people who actually do anything in this movie.
Martin must be scientist man.
Yeah, he's bio-sci student. Yeah, so immediately they just kind of start hanging out and partying on the yacht, and then they're like, oh wait, we actually have to work. So the boys are... I like the idea that Walter, at first he's just being nice to the bimbos because they need a hotel room. And then I like that he gets pulled away from that when he's with them at dinner, and I thought it would have been really funny if he just like stiffed him with the check. But he doesn't do that. Hilarious.
He says to George Kennedy, he's like, you don't realize that if people are looking into us, if the feds are looking into us having two bimbos, that's going to make us look so much less suspicious. And I'm like, no, that's going to make you look like a coke dealer. Are you kidding me?
It's not Miami, it's Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, yeah, there's cocaine only exists in one city. Well, they're
Yeah, get
going
it
to
right.
the Cayman Islands. I mean, it's like it's smuggling at
More like
that
the
point.
Cocaine Islands.
It's smuggling slash. They look like human traffickers.
They do. They honestly do.
And that's just looking at George Kennedy's hair.
He's trafficking something. But yeah, I don't understand the plot of this movie or how any of it really makes sense or how it really progresses. It winds up like two of the girls are into the two bimbos are into two of the guys, but not Martin because he's too smart or whatever it is. So the whole
Martin's kind of into Rachel, or they're not even like romantically. They're just like talking.
Rachel.
Yeah, no, you're right. They do. It is kind of romantic, I guess. Because he like stands up for her when Walter calls her a dumb broad or whatever.
Yeah, calls her like a dumb bitch or something. It's great. The cat immediately starts wreaking havoc on this boat. He, for whatever reason, Rachel, the captain, has told Clu Gulager, she's like, hey, you gotta pilot this boat. You gotta captain this boat while I go to this party that Walter and the kids are throwing. And Clu Gulager's like, okay, sure.
And he immediately gets drunk, just like me watching this movie.
Exactly. Immediately gets drunk and steers the ship the wrong direction. But as he's doing that, the cat, for whatever reason, starts fucking with the ship. Like the innie cat comes out of the outie cat and then starts like slashing pipes and wires and things like that. And you're like, why is that happening? I don't know. Does the cat understand how boats work? I don't know. Clu Gulager does get attacked by the cat because he does get kicked out of the bridge. Because he's been fucking up so badly. Exactly. And Rachel's like, go sober up, you fucking lush. And he walks around the ship and he finds a stash of, I guess his secret stash of wine. And he lifts the lid on like this box and the cat's in there. And he's like, don't you touch my wine, you fucking cat. Fuck you. Get out of there. And then he swigs wine and spits it on the cat, which pisses the cat off. And any cat comes out and kills him. Well, attacks him, which causes him to fall overboard. You know, like, what the fuck is happening in this movie?
It's pretty clear. A cat just attacked Clu Gulager. Right? I don't understand the what's happening type stuff. It's like what's happening is it's a cat run amok movie. It's a very convoluted way to get there because we have this weird SEC plot that doesn't matter.
Yeah. But
and then I guess we never fully understand the cat, but like,
no,
and why is it in any cat? I'm assuming it's like, okay, we want a killer cat movie. We cannot make a convincing enough cat puppet, so we'll make it like this weird monster cat that comes out of a cat. Like the weird jumps in logic there.
Well, why didn't they just make a monster cat?
They couldn't. They couldn't make one that looked good. This was the best. They tried to make.
This still doesn't.
They tried to make a cat. I know. This is the best they could do. And so they're like, okay, I guess we have to have this come out of the cat for some reason.
That is...
You can't have the bimbos find this puppet and be like, oh, it's so cute.
Yeah, let's bring it on.
Let's take it on. Yeah, like so. It's stupid. But yeah, and then it's like this mutation. You know, when Scientist Man analyzes the blood, he finds that it's mutating, and
yeah, but we're not like, and people are like, is it rabies? He's like, no, you've got lots of blood cells for some reason. And by this point, George Kennedy's already been attacked by the cat, which is one of my favorite scenes. Speaking of
it's the best scene of the film. Well, it's the roller coaster of emotions this takes you on because we've got Bimbo doing yoga. Or
she's like stretching
or whatever, and then Walter is hitting on her and is trying to have sex with her, and it does get pretty rapey.
He throws her onto a couch and jumps
whichever guy is into her gets involved and like kind of shoves him away, and then George Kennedy's immediately there with the gun and he shoots him
like right in the arm.
And then he drops the gun at one point, and he's reaching for his gun. Well, he's not reaching for it. He's reaching for it with his foot.
He goes to kick it out from under a sofa or something.
And that's when the cat attacks. And I'll give this movie credit for decent gore.
Yeah.
Decent. Actually pretty good. We see some like weird stuff going on with George Kennedy's belly. We see like weird pulsating. Even on Clu Gulager's neck, there was stuff going on.
Yeah.
Because the cat is venomous.
Yeah. and it fucks up your blood somehow. But instead of going like full alien and having like blood just bursting out of your chest, they kind of stop at that. He gets like these pulsating like pustules that then just kind of recede, and then he dies. So everybody throws him overboard. They have a little burial at sea for him. But it's a great scene. I think it's done really well, and it was funny above all else because there's no way you can take this seriously.
That's actually interesting how relatively seriously the movie tries to take it. Like, to a certain extent, they're having fun. They're getting a puppet cat attacking Academy Award winner George Kennedy. But at the same time, like, there's no, like, a lot of stupid B-movie horror movies go for comedy. This movie doesn't. Mm-hmm. It's trying to be serious. I don't know if it's like I think it's the wrong tone for this movie. I think they should have gone for like a Gremlins type thing because again, referencing Hobgoblins, like this fits into that kind of rubber puppet monster, Critters, Gremlins, like those movies are all kind of tongue in cheek. I don't know why they tried to make it serious.
Yeah, and then to make it even more serious, or to add to the seriousness of the situation that the characters are facing, like not only are they like, hey, there's a monster cat running around, it's venomous, and if it bites you, it'll kill you. It's picking people off one by one. Also, the boat's dead in the water.
Not really. It just picks off the two and then does fuck all for another hour.
Sort of, yeah. But anyways, and then it's like, well, we can't get the boat started. It's broken beyond repair. Oh, all of our food is poisoned by the cat. So they just keep on stacking, like, things on top of it to make the situation seem more dire. But, like, it's just such a ridiculous joke of a movie that you're like, all of this is stupid. So, I mean, like, after George Kennedy gets bitten, they want to call the Coast Guard or whoever to get helivaced away or something. I don't know. But Walter's like, we gotta make it to the Cayman Islands before Monday so I can get all my money out and I can get away scot-free. And he shoots the radio.
Very Jaws.
Yeah. And then this is when we find out that there's poison in the cat because Martin kind of debriefs everybody. And then after that, possibly one of my favorite things I've ever seen in a movie for this podcast, Bobby, one of the bimbos, and Lance, the guy that was shot in the arm when he tried to save Bobby from being raped by Walter. They're like laying in bed and they're making out. Things are getting a little hot and heavy. And he's like, I have no feeling in my arm because it was shot, but my dick can still get hard. And Bobby's like, well, let me take a look at your boo-boo. And she pulls back the sheets and the monster cat is just eating his hand under the sheet, and there's just blood everywhere, and she screams, and the cat takes off, and then Lance is like, I'm just gonna kill myself, the poison's already in my system, and people are like, no, Lance, don't, and then he jumps off and drowns, and we never see him again. So shit like that starts happening, and then almost immediately after that, they discover that the cat has gotten into the pantry, and it's infected all the food because it's eaten parts of all the food, so now they can't eat any of the food because it's full of poison. You know, like, it's just so stupid. Yeah, what else happens after? Everybody's getting a little testy and hungry. And the other bimbo, she was like, hey, oh, wait, doesn't she die? I don't know. At one point, one of the idiots goes into the fucking engine room of the ship. They've been trying to bait the cat with poison food, but when he goes down to check to see if the cat's dead, it's still alive. It hasn't eaten any of the food. He starts firing the gun off. And he, like, explodes a steam pipe, which kills him. I don't think the cat gets him. And then one of the girls doesn't believe Martin and Rachel that the food is poisonous. So she finds a set of keys on the deck that fell out of Rachel's pocket when Rachel and Walter got into a fight and Walter called her a dumb bitch. And she goes into the storeroom and eats some bread and then almost dies. Well, she dies immediately, but almost immediately after eating the bread. And, like, the last 10 minutes of the movie, we get, it's Martin, Rachel, and Walter. Those are the only three left. And this big storm comes in, and it starts swamping the boat. So they're kind of piling into a lifeboat, and Walter starts throwing these briefcases that are full of $1 million each.
This is weird. The storm literally comes out of nowhere. And it's like, we don't know anything about the storm until the yacht is being flooded.
Yeah.
And then somehow the lifeboat is better to be on. Can't that get flooded too?
Yeah, I guess, you know. I don't know. I guess maybe if you're in a lifeboat, it'll probably
it
Be
drains
better than
better
a
or something.
non-sinking ship? I don't know.
Still, the problem is the storm isn't even acknowledged or mentioned until it's flooding. Mm-hmm. Like literally, I'm not exaggerating. That's how it happens.
But that's like the same way that they've addressed all of the problems in this movie. It's not a problem until they immediately, like, they're like, oh, hey, you think we have a lot of food? Guess what? We just opened the store.
That's not true. That's not true. They were talking about the food. They talk about how, like, they'll be okay because as long as the cat doesn't get into the pantry and infect the food, it's going to be just fine. They find out that the cat gets into the pantry like 15 minutes later. The cat also breaks the yacht long before that's truly a problem. So, like, no, that's not technically true, what you're saying.
Okay, I'll believe you. Yeah, and then we didn't mention this earlier, but for some, like, Walter's got 3 briefcases that are full of $1 million each, and he throws 2 of them into the lifeboat, and he goes, I gotta go into the boat to get the 3rd briefcase. So they kind of try to stop him, but he's like, no, I gotta go. He goes to grab it, but guess what? There's the cat there, and any cat comes fully out of the cat and jumps up at his face from under the water, because he's up to, like, his belly button in water in the boat, and it kills him. And Martin runs in and realizes that he's dead, and he leaves. They hop in the lifeboat with $2 million in cash, and you think they're gonna ride out this storm and be safe. But no, the cat shows up on the lifeboat, and Martin has to fight it off twice. And then there's, like, some kind of a line where Martin's like, I think it's clinging to the boat because it's the only thing floating in this ocean. So they empty one of the briefcases into a duffel bag and then just throw the empty briefcase out into the ocean. And the cat clings to that instead.
And that's like a comedy shot.
It is.
It looks, yeah,
It's
it
awful.
looks funny.
I guess they arrive at Grand Cayman or something. And they're safe, and they're going to be
They arrive
rich.
at Goodwill, where that's where the actor's costume came from. The customs officer.
Yeah,
or
whatever he is, yeah.
I had a better looking naval officer costume in elementary school.
The best shot of the movie, though, is perhaps one of the most perplexing shots, where the movie ends with a kid walking down the beach, and he sees a briefcase in the sand, and there's also a black cat.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's a real cat. It's been a monster cat the entire time.
Yeah.
Because the orange tabby didn't make it. The orange tabby drowns, I assume. We never see it again.
I would assume, I guess. And instead of making it a monster cat again, they just turn it into a black cat. And a kid runs over on the beach and picks up the black cat, and it freeze frames on this kid, lifting this cat off of the sand. And that's it. That's the end of Uninvited. So, Patrick, what did you think of this movie?
I think it kind of sucks. I think there are moments, like I mentioned, there are moments of fun. But you're selling me on Killer Cat. Mm-hmm. And not only Killer Cat, you're selling me on a mutant cat that lives inside another cat. Mm-hmm. This movie should not be nearly as boring as it is.
No, absolutely.
It has relatively good gore, surprisingly good gore, like makeup effects wise. Like that was more than I was expecting. Like I felt satisfied in that way, but one of the biggest problems is that it's difficult to tell most of the characters apart. The 2 bimbos are more or less without character. 2 of the 3 young men that accompany them are basically the same. And it's bad. Like when I first... Well, I guess I've seen this movie 3 times now because I saw it twice today. But... When I first saw it, I looked at my Letterboxd review of it, and I only gave it 1.5 stars out of 5. But this was also back when the rating was based on quality and not necessarily how much I enjoyed it, so I could still enjoy a movie if I gave it even like a half star, and it all mattered if I clicked the little heart. And I had clicked the heart. And folks, I moved the 1.5 star up a little bit, but I unclicked that heart. This movie sucks. It's so dull.
Yeah.
It's so dull.
Do you think that's because the plot doesn't make sense for the most
part?
part?
It's because the movie sucks. Who cares? I mean, it's boring. Like you don't even need to make the cat inside another cat to you don't have to make that make sense to have a fun Killer Cat on the Loose horror movie. But they also didn't explain that, and they didn't make a fun Killer Cat on the Loose horror movie. They didn't explain that, and they made a boring ass Killer Cat movie. And again, you said you can't take any of it seriously, and I agree with you. But the film tries to take it seriously, and it's just like pathetic. When we have a lot of scenes in that like second act, like after they know, or like late second act, at the point when they're holding Walter hostage, and at the point when that one guy's already been shot and George Kennedy's dead, when there are like numerous scenes of like, oh, that cat could be anywhere, and they have to like check the closet, and then, oh, it's not a cat, it's like a fake out. But like they're trying to make these scenes tense, and it's just so pathetic.
Yeah, and I think like the only character that was an interesting character is Rachel, the captain of the ship. And she's the only...
even that's being generous, and she's the most interesting.
Well, even like she's got like a bit of a backstory, like how she wound up there. Like it was like her dad had worked with or for Walter at some point, and he had squandered money or died or something, and she
also refuses to fuck Walter for money. Basically, that's implied.
Yeah, and Walter's gonna leave her the yacht when he gets to the Cayman Islands, and she's like, I don't want your fucking yacht.
That's only true once they're trying to get her to not report Clu Gulager going overboard. I don't think he has intention of doing that.
Oh,
to begin
okay,
with.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because that was because she's like, I have to report that Clu Gulager fell overboard, because they don't even know that he was killed by the cat. They just think, oh, he fell overboard.
Yeah,
and
then
then they're eventually like, oh, but he can't, like, we're going to waste all this time. They're never going to find a body because Clu Gulager can't swim.
Yeah, Rachel's like,
but she's still going to report it, and then they're like, hey, I wasn't going to tell you this, but I'm going to give... But then he doesn't even say he's going to give her the yacht. He's like, I'm going to give you the yacht at a price that I think you'll be... Like, he's still... It's a terrible bribe.
Oh, yeah,
because he's still making her pay.
You know what movie this reminded me of as I was watching it? Just because like it jumped so much, and one scene just flat out didn't lead into another for the most part. It reminded me of Gone with the Pope.
That's blasphemy.
But Gone with the Pope
Not just because the Pope's involved.
No, but Gone with the Pope was interesting.
Gone with the Pope is literal blasphemy. but it's an amazing film in comparison.
But I think Gone with the Pope, though, was bizarre enough. And
also heavy on a lot of yacht usage in that film.
Yes, a lot of yacht usage. But also usage of, like, obese hookers and midgets. And that was interesting.
Midgets?
Yeah, wasn't there a midget in that movie?
No.
Oh. Are you sure? Was there a little
damn
person
near
in that
positive. Movie? No, there's a black woman that they humiliate. and then there's the 700-pound white woman that they also humiliate.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Okay. But remember how Gone with the Pope, they would just have like a scene of like people sitting around a table, and then it would smash cut to them just like doing something completely different, and then you didn't know they were kidnapping the Pope until like halfway through the movie. You know, it's like stuff like that. That's what this movie reminded me of.
So you are comparing this film, I almost said theatrically released. This wasn't theatrically released, obviously. This was a direct-to-video schlock. But you're comparing this film from 1988 to a film made by a psychopath that was not released in his lifetime, that was lost in a dumpster for 40 years.
Yeah, mainly because this should have been lost in a dumpster and never found.
Yeah. This movie's just so lame.
It is, and I thought I would have good things to say about it, but I don't.
I thought I would too. I remember enjoying this movie.
I think really like the best part is when
George Kennedy.
Yeah, is when he gets attacked.
That's the best bit of gore. The George Kennedy, not only when he gets bit by, when we see it in close-up, it's like the size of a lion, when he gets bit by the hand puppet, but even when he's like dying and he has that, it looks like they're going to go full chest burster and they stop short of that. He just like dies when stuff is kind of like poking out from him. But yeah, like all the gore effects were good, but also that scene was just fun, and the way it's fun to see the venerable George Kennedy just getting attacked by a puppet. Like,
on his ankle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I really have to say about this movie, is that it was boring. It was a bit of a slog, and I don't think I'll ever watch it again.
I'm with you.
So, Patrick, which one of our 2 movies, in my case 3 movies...
No, you don't get to answer this question. Just ask me it.
Which one did you like better?
You don't get to answer either the next 2 questions. But yes,
Okay.
I prefer The Last House on the Left. I think it's just clearly a better movie. I think it misses its mark in a lot of ways, but The Uninvited or Uninvited, I have seen it listed as The Uninvited on occasion, but I think it's just Uninvited. Misses its mark in almost every way. In every way not involving George Kennedy, basically. It's a bad movie. Last House on the Left is definitely not a great movie, but it's not a bad movie, even if you don't think it's that good. Like, it's not a bad movie. There's effective things about it. And as for how I view it as a double feature, I expected this to be awesome because Last House on the Left is so dark and so depressing. If you get done watching Last House on the Left and you just want to watch fun schlock, you think, oh, a movie about a killer cat that attacks George Kennedy and Clu Gulager. Like, that should be like the perfect follow-up, but the movie was just so boring. It's not a good double feature. Unfortunately, I that's the most disappointing thing about this, is like, I thought this was going to work. Like, it was going to be weird, but I thought it was going to work, and it doesn't.
Do you think the cat movie would have worked better if it wasn't set on a boat? Like if it was set in like a jungle and it was a tiger with this thing inside of it or something?
A tiger inside a tabby?
No.
I mean, that's not too much.
That is a good idea, though.
With the size difference of the monster cat versus the cat that it supposedly lived inside, but
what if it was like a thing?
I mean, I don't know about
a
jungle. I don't know about a jungle, but I do agree that the yacht setting does kind of make it boring because we just have a limited locations, and I don't know what the best location would have been for this movie, but I don't think this is it.
Yeah, I agree. Patrick and listeners, I will watch the correct movie tomorrow, but that doesn't do either of you any good because we have already recorded this episode.
So, and listeners, you're getting your wish because Jim isn't going to be on our next episode.
Patrick's getting his wish too.
Is going to be on The Thing from Another World from 1951 and Invasion of the Astro Monster, the next Godzilla film. So I'm going to be having Sean, our resident Godzilla expert, back for that one. So that's going to be fun. That's a very heavy sci-fi episode because that is, obviously it's The Thing from Another World, classic 50s sci-fi, but Invasion of the Astro Monster is as sci-fi as Godzilla ever got, I will say. So there's a couple more movies for you not to watch, Jim.
I'm gonna watch them. Why do you keep thinking I don't watch them?
Have you watched Hong Kong Godfather yet?
No, I haven't. I work 6 days.
What about Single White Female?
No, but which one did I watch? I know, I've got the list. I keep them on a list. I forget. I've watched 2 of them.
Interestingly, that's what the government keeps you on, too.
How dare you.
After you watch Caligula.
Oh, no.
All right, thanks for joining us, guys. And we hope you're going to enjoy our next episode. Check out our Patreon.
We just did The Two Towers.
Yes, the Lord of the Rings The Two Towers is our August 2024 commentary track, where we, in a rather fun activity, and this will make its way on YouTube as well, of course, but we casted we did a full cast of the Lord of the Rings movie starring the Beatles, where we kept the Beatles in their roles, but we tried to get period appropriate actors for the late 60s in their parts. A lot of big actors that you're going to be familiar with, and then I was just thinking, just today, we didn't mention Charlton Heston. I think he would have been a decent Aragorn, but we didn't mention him, but we got a pretty good Aragorn. You'll have to check out that commentary track or that YouTube video to see which one we selected. All right, have a pleasant rest of your day, folks, and we'll see you next time.